Vox Box Podcast, Episode 6. Remember in New Hope where Luke Skywalker faced off with Darth Vader and they both had red lightsabers and Leia was behind him and Luke was going to kill him and Darth Vader knew who Luke Skywalker's name was? Yeah, I don't remember that either.
What is thy bidding, my master?
There is great disturbance in the Force.
The Vox Box Star Wars Podcast, your source for Star Wars comics, news, and more. And now your host, Michael Corley.
Welcome to the 6th episode of Vox Box Star Wars comic book podcast. I'm your host, Michael Corley. This is the 6th and final comic covering the original movie A New Hope. I had to poke a little fun because in classic comic book drama, the opening page has Luke Skywalker facing off with Darth Vader with lightsabers, while Leia lays in helpless pose. This is a classic pose from any number of, say, Conan the Barbarians. We open with the real comic, and that's with the various groups of TIE fighters and Y-Wings coming in to attack the Death Star. An interesting panel. They have different colors for the different pilots, as they say, Blue 2 standing by, Blue 3 standing by. There is a real drama to these pages as the X-Wings move to the surface. The various defenders of the Death Star are asking, why in the world are they doing this? Are they insane? Why aren't they even defending their own base? As Luke makes his initial assault on the Death Star, the narrator says, next instant, blinding laser bolts streaking from Luke's weapons, creating a huge fireball on the battle station's dim surface, a fireball he cannot avoid. Unable to turn in time, Luke's fighter plunges into the expanded ball of superheated gases, where Luke Skywalker knows the terror of the damned. Basically, Luke's plane went through something really hot, but he came out okay. Inside, Darth Vader is getting the report that even though the battle station is not in any real danger at this time, it's not really designed to attack little tiny ships. It's designed to attack huge ships and planets. And that's when Darth Vader says we'll have to destroy them ship to ship. As the TIE fighters come in, we see thought balloons. Of course, another thing that we don't get in the movies, as Luke Skywalker is wishing that Han and Chewbacca were here because they were, of course, so instrumental in his first space battle where they were able to fight off the TIE fighters escaping the Death Star. The TIE fighters close in on Biggs, and he says, I can't shake him! I can't shake him! And that's when Luke is able to come up behind and save Biggs. But Porkins, sometimes they just don't try very hard in Star Wars. Porkins, the portly fighter pilot, is killed by the TIE fighters. Biggs even thinks to himself, so long, piggy, you will be avenged. And I really want to point out, especially here at the end, the colorists really went all out. They didn't have modern Photoshop, but they really did their best to convey the laser blasts, the energy that was going on, the space behind the ships. They were doing everything they could with the technology they had to make this as exciting as possible. They even draw the readouts reflected in Darth Vader's helm. Darth Vader is able to take out more of the X-Wings, leaving only Luke and Wedge and Biggs. Inside, Tarkin is informed that there is a danger on their attack pattern, and he's asked if he would like to leave. And he says, evacuate? Never! The idea is treasonous! Luke is trying to lock on to the exhaust port, and that's when he hears, trust your feelings, Luke. And very interestingly, it says it is a young, old voice, which sounds in his ears, a familiar voice, a voice at once calm, confident, contented, and reassuring, a voice he has listened to intently on the deserts of Tatooine. And that's when Luke realizes this is Ben Kenobi, and that he may have merged with the Force. It actually says that in there. He is merged with the Force, and that his spirit is here with him now. Darth Vader closes in and takes out Biggs. In the original story, Biggs was supposed to be a much more critical character, one of Luke's oldest friends. And this moment would be much more devastating if he didn't have a much more minor part in the actual movie. But clearly Luke is devastated by the loss of his friend. Wedge has to leave off, though he doesn't want to. He can't stay with Luke. That leaves only Luke and 3 TIE fighters coming in to destroy him. And that's when something happens, and that means that it's time for
dramatic reenactment.
He's getting too close to our vulnerable point. You two, go back. I shall handle it personally. He will be in range in another second. Prepare to fall by the immortal gods of the Sith.
That amazing reading of Darth Vader was done by Mike Pilot. He's from the Full of Sith podcast. Actually, the first Star Wars podcast that I ever listened to. It's a safe haven for all Star Wars fans, no matter what your views. People say what they want. It's a Star Wars for everyone. You can find them at fullofsith.com, and they're also Full of Sith on Twitter and Facebook. One final thing, you can even find them under the podcast section of StarWars.com. Thanks, Mike. The narrator says, a space freighter that does not move like a freighter, but somehow faster. Sure, its name is the Millennium Falcon, and its captain Han Solo is one of the best pilots in the galaxy. The Falcon's intervention causes the Vader's wingman to veer off, and Vader, his instruments out of control, sends him heading off into deep space. And again we see the thought balloon of Luke, trust me. And the narrator tells us that he hit a narrow target that Luke has not even seen. And again, the words of Ben Kenobi come to him out of the recent past. Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them. Stretch out with your feelings. And he does. Now he's telling Han Solo to get out of here before this thing goes supernova. And we're treated to a full panel of the explosion when it says, then without warning, the eternal night of space becomes, for a few seconds, the brightness of day. No one dares look directly at the exploding battle station. Not even multiple shields set on high could dim that awesome glare sufficiently to prevent permanent blindness. The universe seems filled for an instant with trillions of microscopic metal fragments propelled past the retreating ships by the liberated energy of a small artificial sun. The collapsed residue of the Death Star will continue to consume itself for several days, forming for that brief span of time the most impressive tombstone of the cosmos. My goodness, that's some good comic book writing. We see the triumphant return. R2-D2 has been damaged. C-3PO is demanding that they repair him. Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie are all celebrating. And I love this line. This is a comment that has come out in the internet again and again and again. And the narrator says, Leia places gold medallions around Han Solo's neck, then Luke Skywalker's. Chewbacca the Wookiee, too, will have his own medal, but he will have to put it on himself. Few space princesses are that tall. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have the explanation why Chewbacca didn't get a medal at the end of Star Wars A New Hope. It's because Princess Leia was too short. And as all of them turn to face the cheering crowd, that is the end of New Hope, but the beginning of Star Wars. And that ends number 6. Thank you so much for listening with me through the first 6, covering the iconic movie A New Hope. I want you so much to stay with me, because next issue we are going off the rails. We are going off the movies and straight into comic book lore. Heads up, it involves a 6-foot green rabbit. If you would like to find out more about having a dramatic reading of your very own, go to voxboxpodcast.com/Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. You have a wonderful day, and may the Force be with you.
No! You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
So be it, Jedi.
Thank you for listening to the Vox Box Star Wars podcast. Go to voxboxpodcast.com to see panels from today's comic. Have a great day, and may the Force be with you.
I'm looking for the levels and controls. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Okay, here we go. Here we go.